The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André, your host. Thank you once again for tuning in, and big thanks to Ookla the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And another big thank you to you, gentle listener, for tuning in for another fun-filled episode. Today, I speak with Chelsey Scully, lovely lady I met at the Island Expo in PEI, who does some amazing, I think she calls them hoodoo dolls on her Facebook page, kind of the yarn-style voodoo doll. They're really super cool. The style of detail is amazing, and she does some stupendous work, like truly stupendous work. I posted a few on social media leading up to this. Definitely check them out and check her out. I believe we'll talk about where to see those online and grab some of your very own. They're well worth it. You will not be disappointed. As you can tell, if my voice sounds a little off, I am recovering from a head cold. Not COVID. I know it's not COVID because I took a test while saying no Rona, no Rona, no Rona, no Rona, no Rona. And thankfully that worked. But I have a stuffy nose and all this stuff that generally doesn't come with coronavirus. Mostly head cold side of things, which is annoying, and also trying to explain that I don't have COVID to people. But in the end, I'm recovering nicely. I should be fine, and I will survive, which is important. Survive. In the nerd world, the trailer for Thor: Love and Thunder has come out, and my God, it looks fun. I posted a little thing with the poster, asking who's excited, who saw the trailer. Had some fun feedback. Some people that are really into it, some people that feel like Taika Waititi's style deviates pretty far from the comics. Regardless, I don't know. I think it looks pretty cool. And I think the first Thor movie kind of leaned into Thor being fun and not quite so serious as well. So it seems like these movies are leaning into that heavily. But I'm okay with that. I mean, it draws heavily from Jason Aaron's run on the series, where Jane Foster takes on the mantle of Thor after Thor himself becomes unworthy after an encounter with Gore the God Butcher. Actually, it's after an encounter with Nick Fury, who took over the Watcher, who references something that Gore the God Butcher said. So it's a little more convoluted, but I feel as though they're going to streamline it for the series, or for the show rather. And it looks amazing. I'm super pumped for it. I'm a little behind on Moon Knight, a couple episodes behind. I'm not caught up, but I will soon, and I'm excited to do so. I'm also very pumped for movies coming out, The Northman, by Robert Eggers, who did The Witch and The Lighthouse, two movies I'm a huge fan of. That's coming out. And also The Unbearable Weight of Something Genius, the Nicolas Cage movie that's coming out with him and Pedro Pascal, where he plays himself. That looks like a lot of fun too. So it's been a good movie week. I'm excited to see some more movies. But so why not get through it? Let's just get right into my conversation with Chelsey Scully, in which we talk about, everything about Chelsey Scully. It's a great talk, great conversation, and I'm glad you're here for it. So here is my talk with Chelsey Scully.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Perfect. How are you?
I am well, and yourself?
Good, thank you.
I love your attire back there.
My what?
The stuff back there behind you. The leather face is fantastic.
Oh yeah, he's I don't even remember what brand he was. It might have been NECA.
It looks like a NECA one.
I think it was, yeah.
I
found him at a thrift shop, so.
Really? Holy crap, that's a good find.
Yeah. I didn't have the box, but.
Oh, well, that's all right.
Oh, I love your gremlins. Are those the Trick or Treat Studio ones?
The ones that were the replicas of the puppets?
Yeah.
Yes, they are. I don't know if you can see the other guy in the corner too.
Oh, the flasher.
Yeah.
I want those so bad.
Yeah, I don't know if they stopped with those ones or they kept making them. I used to help out at a comic store years ago, so I would see the ads for them, so I could jump on them real quickly. But then when
Mhm.
that place closed up, I haven't been around as much, so I kind of
Yeah.
missed what they
Well,
kept coming. But
yeah. Well, you can still get them online on their site, I think, but it's in American funds, so
oh,
that's my
yeah,
problem.
it's the
I'm like,
worst.
I mean, it's worth it, but I don't really have $200 to drop on something.
Yeah, I know it was super handy
Yeah.
when I worked in the place because I
Mhm.
got it for cost. So like, it's like
Yeah.
save some money and also get to and load up. But I got those guys. I have a friend of mine. There are these kits they were selling a while ago that are that were
Oh, those are
like
cute.
model kits. So that's a full size
Oh,
one that's like it's not posable like the other ones, but
yeah.
a friend of mine does special effects in movies. I worked with him on a Stephen King movie a few years ago. I do a bit of acting. He took that one and did it up and painted it to look exactly like the one from Gremlins 2.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm a huge Gremlins fan, obviously. So there's a
Oh, me too.
Gizmo up there, and there's it's hard to see there, but the striped Mogwai is back there too from the first one.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So how are you? How are
Good.
things?
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
How'd you do at
Yeah.
the Island Expo?
Actually, better than I thought I would.
Really?
Um, yeah, like I wasn't really prepared because I didn't think they were gonna have it, so I didn't really prep.
Ah,
But yeah, no, I did quite well.
awesome. Is it just
Yeah.
because you didn't have the prep, or do you think that people don't like your stuff's
Well,
niche enough that it's hard to predict how well you're going to do at this sort of events?
um, usually if I were to do an Island Expo like that, I would kind of go beyond the scary stuff. Like I would have probably had more like children's stuff, like Coraline or Ghostbusters, or even like Pokemon, just like little things like that. Um, but yeah, all I really had were my spooky stuff, and some I didn't even bring, like anything with a dick. I was like, we'll just leave that at home because
Like your
yeah, I'm not.
Angela doll specifically?
Yeah, yeah. And last year I had a little curtain, and I put them kind of behind the curtain, and it was like XXX. So if you were over 18, you could look behind the curtain. But
Oh,
I didn't do that this year. I
that's
just
a
kind of brought what was acceptable and went
that's
with that.
that's really clever. It's funny what's acceptable in
Yeah,
what I mean, these events, because
I
literally
know.
beside you is a place selling swords. Like
Yeah,
literally stuff used to hurt other, like I know they're just decorative and they're based on, a lot of things from fiction. But
yeah.
it's like you can sell weapons of murder over here, but to see a penis or
I
breast or
know.
something that everybody has is like it's so taboo you can't possibly look at it. It'll just break your
Yeah,
mind. So it's ridiculous.
exactly. We don't want to scar the children too early.
No, no, certainly. Let's not give them a healthy, understanding about sexuality. That's do nothing but warp them for their future as adults.
Mhm.
Ridiculous. So thanks for being on. I'm really happy to have you.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me.
Oh well, after we were talking at the event, I was like, man, I think Chelsey and I would have a great conversation. So we obviously have a lot in common
Mhm.
with a deep love of horror movies, as I can tell, and I'm sure most of our listeners could as well. Um,
Yeah.
so you didn't start in PEI, right? You're from Alberta originally? Just a cursory glance to your Facebook told me
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'm originally from Spruce Grove, Alberta, so
Oh,
just outside of Edmonton there.
okay.
Yeah.
And
And
what
then
was
I moved to PEI like, oh God, it's been so long. It's been like 11 years, maybe 12 years
really?
ago. Yeah.
Were you in Alberta right for that point?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in Spruce Grove and then I moved to Edmonton, of course, when I turned like 18. I was like, I'm going out on my own to the big city. And
The big
yeah, I
city.
lived there.
You left the oh, okay, sorry. So you went moving your
Yeah.
18 to Edmonton, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, from Spruce Grove to Edmonton, and then from right from there I went to PEI. Well, I stayed there for years and then moved to PEI the 12 years ago.
So what was growing up in Spruce Grove like? I don't have much of a concept of Alberta. I haven't been there as a province. Like I've been to Winnipeg and
Um,
a few others like it, but I mean, as an East Coaster, we all assume people from Alberta are just like all driving Hummers or big
yeah,
4-wheel trucks and
that's
complaining
pretty much
about
what it
Trudeau.
is.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, yeah, especially like Edmonton. I always say like people will be like, "Oh, you're from Edmonton. I was there. It was nice." I'm like, "You don't have to lie to me." Like it's dirty, it's trashy, it's just full of loud, obnoxious people with big trucks and too much money, right?
Hmm.
Um, I always say Edmonton is like the States of Canada.
Yeah,
Like they're just awful.
I've
people.
heard that. I think I've heard it described as the Texas of Canada, which I thought was
Yeah,
really
yeah.
relevant.
It was definitely a culture shock moving here.
Oh,
Like I
really?
had to kind of tone it down a bit because people just talk to you out here for like just to be friendly.
Hmm.
Like you'll walk down the street and they're just like, "Hey," and at first I was like, "What do you want?" Like, "No, fuck off." Like, yeah. And my husband was like, "You need to tone it down. They're just being nice." So I'm like, "No, they want something, right?" But I have toned it down. It's a lot more chill here, right?
Yeah, definitely a slower pace, but I think that's not necessarily
Yeah.
a bad thing. It's I grew up here in Nova Scotia, so and haven't dallied too far from it. I mean, I've traveled, but I've never really lived outside Nova Scotia. So
Mhm.
this sort of East Coast way of life, I've grown to really appreciate it, especially when you see more of the world and just kind of see how down to earth and nice the people are in this general area.
Yeah.
So what did you like? What did your folks do then in Alberta when you were growing up?
Um, my mom, she was a receptionist for a while, and then she was just kind of like a stay-at-home mom.
Hmm.
And my dad was actually a firefighter for the city of Edmonton.
Oh wow, you must have got a lot of. He must have been busy.
Yeah, yeah, it's different from the firefighters out here. Like I think it's all volunteer out here.
Mostly, yeah. There are big
Um,
cities do have dedicated firefighting.
yeah, they're like with the cops, I think, on the payroll there. They're just kind of they
Yeah.
work for the city, right?
Yes, yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's mostly just Halifax and Nova Scotia, maybe Charlottetown there, but I think
Hmm.
aside from that, there's little firehouses everywhere that are mostly just manned by local volunteers.
Yeah, yeah, but I think it's probably busier in the big cities too, right? Like fires everywhere.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, out here it's like a barn or some kids that light something in the woods on fire. It's never
Hmm.
usually like a huge event unless something goes off the rails, but it's pretty rare, I'd say. Anything
Yeah.
majorly, unless there are a lot of old buildings, so there's that too. But
Hmm.
so were you like, was horror always a thing for you growing up?
Oh yeah. Like
Yeah.
my dad was a huge horror fan. And well, I grew up in the 80s, so this was like before well, we didn't even have cable because we lived in the country. And it
This is
was like
sounding
super
very familiar.
expensive. Yeah, yeah, it was like super, super expensive to get cable because you couldn't just like have somebody pop in and, give it to you. You had to pay hundreds of dollars to get a phone line or something. I don't know what it was. So we just had like the four channels until I was about probably right until I moved out. And then I moved out and my parents got satellite. And right when I moved out, and then now that I have a kid, I realize it's because kids are expensive. So
Mhm.
they could probably afford satellite after I moved out.
She's gone. Get the
Yes,
good satellite.
pretty much.
Yeah.
And so the movies we watched were mostly the ones I grew up on were like VHS, but it was weird because we get them from my uncle, and he always had like these weird bootlegged copies of these VHS, like the ones in like the brown case with like the writing on the side.
Oh
And it was
yeah.
just like random spooky movies.
Interesting.
And so he just lent them to my dad and we'd watch those.
What were
Uh,
standouts? Do you remember?
Pardon?
What were standouts for you? Do you remember? Like, what's the ones that really hooked you?
The one that hooked me where I was like, I love scary movies was a movie called House. And
Really, the '80s, the William Katz one
yeah,
from the '80s. Really?
yeah, yeah. And I remember watching it. And I've always been into like the monsters and all that.
Uh-huh.
And I just remember seeing that house witch, like when she came at him with the shotgun where he shoots his
Wow.
wife and then she turns into like the
Yeah.
creature. And like I just saw that and I distinctively remember being like, that is the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen, right? Like, and I love this and I loved that whole monster and I love the whole rubber latex.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever heard anyone like that's into the horror genre talk about House with such reverence, because like I
Yeah.
watched it for the first time not that long ago, and I wasn't
Yeah.
super impressed, but I also watched it as a
Mhm.
jaded 34-year-old maybe at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I was
Adult.
like 6.
Yeah,
So maybe
that'll
5 or
do it.
6. I was
Like the
like, this is
stories all over the
cool.
map. There's like Bull from Night Court is like, this guy, and then he's a monster, and then there's the witch, and then there's like it's just there's so much happening all at once that it's kind of hard to keep track of it all. But it's
Yeah.
interesting. The effects are amazing, so I can see why you would gravitate towards that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I find they do like stand up now. I mean, you can definitely tell it is somebody in a costume kind of thing, but when you watch it now, it doesn't look super campy like some of
Mhm.
the older movies do, right? Like it stands the test of time sort of
Mm.
thing, the makeup.
It's even more
Yeah.
impressive in the modern day because you're watching these in like Blu-ray format, or Blu-ray quality film or 4K in some instances. So you're seeing way more definition than you would expect to have seen when they filmed it.
Yeah.
Like my wife and I watched it was a Corman movie. The one with the not Forbidden Planet, the other one, Galaxy of Terror. Do you ever see that one?
Okay.
So
No, I haven't.
Sid Haig's in it and Robert Englund's in it. I think it's before, like way before they were huge. I mean, I would never say Sid Haig was huge, but like when he was young and before. And there's a scene where like a bunch of these people that are on this crazy planet are getting killed off, and then later on their ghosts sort of all appear to the survivor. And Haig's character gets his arm cut off, and you see all the ghosts coming at the guy, and Haig's character has no arm. But when you see them circling him, you can clearly see that Haig's arm is painted black, and he just has it behind his back. So like, with VHS quality, like you'll never notice that. But in Blu-ray, it's very, very clear. The stuff like that I find very fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's amazing. So it's neat that your dad got you into it. Like a lot of people that I find are into comics or horror, that sort of stuff. Usually it's an older brother or a cousin or somebody. But I love that it was your dad specifically. That's awesome to have that sort of that role.
Yeah. Well, and I was kind of one of those weird kids that didn't mind being scared. Like I actually liked it. Like he always said, well, watch these movies, but if you start up with can you leave the light on? Can you come in my room at like 1 a.m. because I'm scared, then you can't watch them. So I do remember like at some points laying in my bed with like the covers over my head and making like the tiny little breathing hole because I was just so scared, but I couldn't say anything because then I wouldn't be allowed to watch another scary movie. So yeah, or just like times you'd have to pee and you'd just be sitting there as a kid just like holding it because you did not want to get up off that bed because something was going to grab you or something like that. But deep down I loved it. I was like, yeah, that's the good stuff, good fear.
That is awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
So what did like growing up, did you find a community like in school and stuff amongst people that like the horror stuff as much, or
not really.
No?
I was kind of like I was more of an outcast sort of thing. Even in like elementary and that. I kind of just
I can picture you being the kid that's talking about like the horror movies you've seen while the other kids are talking about like, Batman or something else that most kids would be talking about.
Yeah. Or even just like all the girls were talking about like Barbies and all this. And I was just like, I watched Jason the other day and,
Like a real life Wednesday Addams.
Yeah, pretty much. And it wasn't until I'm going to say end of junior high school, where I kind of just embraced my full goth. I went through the goth phase, and I had a little group of friends, and that's when we started watching like the really weird shit. Like, when you go through that phase where you're like, I'm going to find like the creepiest, goriest, most demented horror film I can find and put it on. And to this day, I'm just like, why did I watch that? Like,
you still have that impulse now as an adult?
Yeah.
I have that too. Do you still have that impulse now as an adult? Like you seek out the really weird?
It kind of depends. I don't find there's a lot of films out there now that are that disturbing. It was kind of like a different time back then where you could get away with more.
I feel like for me, the time, like when you're a kid, I guess what you find disturbing shifts when you get older. Like when I'm a kid, it's like, anything that's really gory or gross or like Dead Alive or something like that seems out there just because it's got a ridiculous amount of gore, like Peter Jackson's Brain Dead or whatever. But then when you get older, it's almost like stuff that's almost so real or has like such beyond, like, I don't want to throw a lot of obscure names out there, but like a Serbian film or like weird movies that go into like places that like as a society most people don't want to like, or what's the one, the Human Centipede or stuff like that, that's like just like going into places that are just so far beyond or almost too close to reality that it's really disturbing in that this stuff happens. Like I was reading about that movie. Did you ever see Megan is Missing?
You know what? I have a story about that one because everybody was talking about it.
Yeah.
And I guess it's not really a story, but everyone was talking about it. And they're like, oh, it's so scary. And these were like teenagers that were saying that. So I'm like, I'm going to have to watch this movie. And then I couldn't find the friggin' movie. And the only copy was like $80 or something. And I'm like, I'm not paying $80 for a movie I haven't seen.
Hmm.
So I watched it and I was very disappointed, actually. I mean, I could see why these teenagers would find it scary, but I found you could just watch like an episode of Oprah or something.
Yeah, that's
And
what I mean. Like pe-
act, right?
people gravitated towards it because it was like I think the movie was sort of made in a way that they were supposed to. It's supposed to be like a cautionary tale for teenagers, but also like maybe wake parents up to how easy something like this could happen to their kids. And
Yeah.
but then they go like fully hard into it near the end. So like stuff that like I guess kind of feels almost too real can be more disturbing sometimes, I guess, beyond the fantastical. But
Hmm.
I mean, movies like Hereditary or any of those new ones that everyone loves. I mean, I'm super on board for that level of. That's kind of what I've been gravitating towards more lately. I know the term elevated horror is popular, and I guess I'll use it for lack of a
Yeah.
better word. But I do love that sort of stuff like this. It's been a really great run of like better than just slasher horror movies coming out lately, and it's been really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I do enjoy how it's kind of going more of a unique twist on all of them. You know what I mean? And what
Mhm.
they're categorizing horror as. Whereas,
Mhm.
back in the day, it was just like it's got blood, it's got guts, it's got boobs. That's horror. Whereas now you can kind of have a real story plot, like a
Yeah,
real storyline, right? So
yeah,
I know what you're saying. Like it could actually happen, and
yeah, and like,
something to think about.
and even not just the level of like be afraid of going in the woods because a guy in a hockey mask could kill you. It's more like
Hmm.
be afraid of your neighbor because they have some backwards ideas or part of something weird that you're not afraid of, don't know about, that you could inadvertently become a part of, and that's possible. Like you
Hmm.
watch a movie like Get Out, and it's like I love that movie so much.
Yeah.
The idea of brain swapping isn't probably realistic, but the idea that
Hmm.
people devalue another race of people enough that they think that they can just take over their lives and don't care. The
Hmm.
the level of that social commentary, I guess, like hits
Yeah.
on. I love that it's beyond just be afraid to be murdered. It's all the stuff that sort of taps into the real horror of our society, but uses
Yeah.
that as the baseline and then adds all the fantastical stuff on top.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed Get Out. And I remember actually being kind of creeped out in the theater because I think every Black person has been in that situation where you're around a bunch of white people and they're
Mm,
just like super nice to you, or they're just acting a little bit off, but you don't know if it's just because that's the way they, you know what I mean? Like we've all been in that situation, and
yeah,
he
I
just
would
kind of
bet.
took it to that next level. He's like, what if they were up to something? And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
well, Jesus. Sitting there at
you
my
know
family dinner, just eyeballing them all now.
right,
No, I
because
don't want to see.
right,
Get it.
your husband's white, right?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
is.
so I can see why that would
Mhm.
add a level of hilarity to that situation. But no,
Yeah.
and it does a good job of that too, because even as a white guy myself, like I obviously have no frame of reference for that feeling, but
Hmm.
I certainly have been in situations where the person of color in the room, they feel almost like, they're almost like a novelty, so everybody's got to like, because they're not around as much, so they become
Hmm.
the center point. And I love the idea that it turns a nefarious end instead of just oh well you're different, instead of oh you're
Hmm.
different and we're going to use that for something. uh
Yeah.
yeah, and I love that like his first movie did such an interesting job of pulling that commentary, and then him doing Us, which sort of is not, I wouldn't say it's so much about the Black experience. I guess it is maybe in a level that I don't understand, but it's more of a culture or status kind of talk about how there's like this level of people below the society we built that we ignore and misuse and mistreat, and when they come back for something beyond that we're all sort of caught in the crosshairs, and I really enjoyed that as well. So I'm super pumped for
Hmm.
the next one. um
Yeah. What's it? Nope.
Nope. Yeah, which looks very much like an alien thing, which sounds awesome to me. So
Yeah. And I kind of like how he's keeping it hushity hush. You know what I mean?
mm.
Like there's
Yeah,
I don't
not
think
even out till
anybody really
September.
knows what it's about exactly.
Yeah, the trailer's still pretty vague. I mean, it does seem like aliens, but it doesn't give you a lot based on that. So
Hmm.
um cool. So you found a community in high school, and what was the like, what were you when you got out of high school? What was the plan? Was it college, university? Well, first you went to Edmonton.
Um, I did. I did want to get into like FX and that,
Oh, okay.
but I was I was one of those weirdos that kind of just practiced it at home,
Hmm.
and it wasn't really super popular. when I graduated high school, so there wasn't like a heck of a lot of FX classes out there. I think there was one in Toronto.
Mhm.
And I was in Edmonton, so I wasn't going to travel to Toronto because I kind of just didn't want to go to school for something I could learn at home. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Um,
So did you
so
have, I
yeah,
mean, you referenced having such a reverence for house. Was that something that instilled that in you, or is it just creature
oh
features in
yeah,
general?
yeah, absolutely. That was like right then and there. I was like, I want to make that stuff. I want to create it, and it just looks so cool that somebody could do that. And I think the only other film that kind of hit me like that was Jurassic Park.
Okay.
When I saw that in theaters, I remember leaving that movie and just being like, I love film. Like I love all movies. That was the most fantastic thing. Like as a kid, seeing that on screen and those dinosaurs are just beautiful, right?
Yeah. Even
And
by
knowing
today's
that,
standards, amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they really are. And just knowing that they actually built all those. I mean, I know there was some CGI, put in there to clean it up and that, but the fact that there's some giant T-Rex rotting somewhere at Universal Studios breaks my heart
Yeah.
because I want to take that home and use it.
Yes.
Stick it on my roof or something.
I feel like you'd have an ultimate Halloween display.
Oh, if I had the money, let me tell you,
Oh,
I
I
would have
hear
the
you.
most ridiculous house all seasons.
My dream was when there was it Home Hardware with some of those massive skeletons. There's a Kent, the ones that
Oh
everybody
yeah,
was buying.
20-foot skeleton.
Yeah, get like 10 of them and just line them up so it looks like they're like on your driveway. Like it just makes like instead of
Yeah,
trees, there's overarching over your driveway. That's always been the dream. Someday maybe.
I know. I'd be
So
that weird person who just leaves it up all year and just decorates it for different seasons. Slap a Christmas hat on that. Put some
yeah, for
Easter
sure.
bunny
I
ears
think there'd be
on.
something interesting about seeing those covered in snow with like a Santa hat on them. For
Yeah.
sure. So did you were you seeking out the masters in that art field, or was it just something you knew you wanted to do someday? Like, were you familiar with Rick Baker or Savini and all those guys at this point, or is that something that came later?
Not like I mean, I knew about Savini because who doesn't, sort of thing. But it was something that I kind of just wanted to do in the back of my mind. But I didn't realize that you could have an actual career as it.
Hmm.
So I was always into crafting and all that anyway, and just like art. I would just kind of do that on the side. I pretty much just did the customer service thing for years upon years. I ended up going to school actually for what was it? Veterinary administration. Veterinary administration. So not the assistant, but like the front desk,
Okay.
like office stuff, which was a complete waste of money. I'm not gonna lie, because they pretty much taught you to be a fancy receptionist, and I'm
I
like,
was
this
gonna
is all.
say, like, isn't it just a
Yeah,
receptionist?
it was useless, but unfortunately, the way the world works, you need that certificate to
Just to be a
get
receptionist
you in
for
the
a
door,
vet.
right?
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I worked at a vet clinic for a while, as
That's
the
an,
front.
how was that as an experience? Because I'm a big animal guy,
Oh,
and I feel like being
yeah,
that
it was
close.
good. Yeah, and even as a kid, like, I did wanna be a vet for a while, because I mean, all
Mm,
kids wanted to be a vet.
yeah, I did.
And I would go into, the local veterinary office and kinda help out there and just do volunteer, and I kinda,
Okay.
like, watch on the surgeries and that and just watch them do it, and, not in a creepy way, just, a scientific way, like,
It's
this
oh
is what I'm supposed to
Chelsea's in
go
the
on,
corner
right?
again, just staring.
I'm taking notes so that I know how to, like, make a proper wound when I become an artist.
That's right. Taking
Um,
photographs of the scars in the wound.
yeah.
I need this for my files.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, no, I really enjoyed working at the vet office. It was really nice and
I feel like
it was good.
the
I liked
hardness
it.
of when animals had to be put down would be something I couldn't deal with on a regular basis.
Yeah, it is, but it's kinda I've always been able to kinda deal with my emotions like that, you know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like,
Death's
I
never something that
understand it's
bothered you.
hard, but you also have to, stay strong for the person on the other side of the desk putting their dog down, right?
Yeah.
And because I wasn't actually the person putting it down, that kinda helped too.
Well, that's a rather like that's something that you feel like a realization like that, I guess, is something that like I feel like now I'm okay with, but I feel like
Mhm.
that comes with time, I guess, when you have a bit of experience with life and you kind of realize that, things happen and you can't
Yeah.
really, you either have to fix them or deal with the consequences. So when you get to that point, it's really just dealing with the consequences, and it's hard. But what else can you do?
Mhm.
So I feel
Yeah,
like there's like a
exactly.
weird level of finality that comes with age that you don't get younger. So it's interesting that you had that already. So
Hmm.
did you lose anyone early in life that gave you that sort of reverent, like that sort of idea, or just something that came with being wise
Not,
beyond your years?
I don't even know what it was. It was just kind of, I don't even think I really lost anyone. Well, I guess I grew up in the country. So, I mean, when we had animals, it wasn't
Mm,
like the way you have animals now. Like,
mm,
I'm not saying we were mean to our animals or anything, but our dogs were outdoor dogs, right?
mm,
Like, they didn't come inside unless it was like super, super cold. And then they could come into like a heated garage.
mm,
But like, they had a warm dog house. It was like insulated.
mm,
And they had the garage if it got like too cold. But they weren't, you didn't really get that strong bond with them.
mm,
You know what I mean? Like, they were farm dogs, right? They were there for a purpose. They were there to guard the house. We played with them. We pet them. We fed them. Took them to the vet. But
mm.
um, yeah, I don't know. I just kind of like they were pets. They weren't like our babies, right?
Yeah.
Um, I did, however, once I moved out and got like an actual like house dog, that was our baby. Like, that was devastating when we had to put him down because he was our baby. And I kind of understood. I'm like, oh yeah, I get it now. People like love their dogs, right?
Yeah.
Or their cats. Like, we always had barn cats. And I was like, a barn cat's just, they come and go, right?
Yeah.
Like, they might be there for a year. They might be there for a month. It depends how hungry the coyotes are. Like,
Yeah.
and then you just get a new one and pop it in there, right? But they weren't nice either. So
Yeah. Well,
you,
that
you
comes
didn't
with.
play with the barn cats.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you mentioned cats because one of them is sitting on my foot right now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we have 4 of them, so I totally
Mhm.
understand they're all rescues that we just end up staying and taking over our house.
Yeah.
So this
They're
is
such weird creatures. Like, we have a indoor cat now too.
mhm,
And then we have an outdoor cat as well for most control because we're in the country.
mhm,
But they're just so, like, we shouldn't like them, but we do. Like, they're such assholes. You know
mhm.
what I mean? Like, it's like they don't give a crap.
It's almost like like that sort of stupid teenage mentality when they're like, well, he's kind of a jerk, but he's sweet to me, so like it means
Yeah.
when he's sweet to me, it means more because he's generally a jerk. It's like that,
Yeah.
but with your cat, and as an adult when you shouldn't have those sort of stupid feelings. So
Yeah.
I mean, generally they're pretty sweet, but
They
yeah,
are.
they got their own thing going on, which I think is somebody once told me cats are an exercise in consent, and people that don't like cats don't like accept that they have to, other people have to be okay with them doing something for them to just do it. Like
Mhm.
selfish people generally have a problem with cats, they say, because if a cat doesn't want to give you its attention, you have to be okay with that. But there are
Mhm.
some people that if you don't give them attention in person or animal, that really bothers them. So it's I always thought that was an interesting sort of allegory for cats.
Yeah.
So did you have any brothers sisters growing up?
I do. I have one brother,
Was he
and
big
he's
into?
still back in Edmonton.
Oh yeah, was he into the horror stuff as well?
No. And he actually, he I don't wanna say he was a wuss, but he was a wuss.
Hmm.
And I remember we were watching Jaws one time, and we I was about 8, so he must have been like 7, 6
Hmm.
or 7. I was about 8 or 9. And he ended up throwing up at the part where Jaws was eating him off the boat. Remember, he like ate
Yep.
half his body and there's blood everywhere. And my
Quint, yeah.
brother threw up. Yeah, and
Yeah.
my brother threw up and ran and told my mom. So
Oh
my mom
no.
came in and said we have to turn it off and we weren't allowed to watch scary movies anymore.
Oh no.
So yeah, my dad just pretty much was like, listen, just don't tell your mom then. And that was good because then I got to watch like the really good scary movies because I wasn't going to tell my mom. So that's when I got to watch, the more gorier stuff and all that,
Yeah.
like the Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, and things like that. So that was a good time.
And you had
And
a
what else?
cool
Oh, and then
dad.
he cried during Jurassic Park. I remember that too. The raptors. He
Uh
was upset with the raptors in the kitchen.
that
And
that
so we almost had to leave the theater. And I was like, why do we even bring him, Dad? Like, he ruins everything. Yeah.
you sound like you had a cool dad, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, we got to stay. It was actually at the drive-in when we saw Jurassic Park. We saw it at the drive-in, and
Oh,
I think
close
he
your
just made us sit
eyes.
in the
Close
back.
your
Yeah, he was
eyes.
like, go sleep in the back. Like, I paid for this. We're not leaving.
Yeah, for sure. Especially that
Yeah.
movie. Like, I can't imagine not as a kid being halfway through that movie and wanting to leave. Like, man, that's such an epic scope of a movie. You gotta stick that one out.
I know, right? Mind you, those raptors were terrifying. I'll give them
Oh,
that. But
100%. Can you imagine if they
yeah.
looked the way they think raptors actually look now, when they have like all these colorful feathers and they were like different, like kind of, they had more of a like a squawky bird kind of noise instead of the growly,
Yeah.
like it's just interesting when science catches up to where they think things were in these, when they made these movies, and how different
hmm
things are.
Yeah. And I still think about those raptors. Like, even if I'm standing outside letting the dog out or something, and I hear like a rustling in the like field across the way, like I never think like, oh, that must be a coyote or a bunny. I'm like, that's a velociraptor. I'm like, get in the house, we're gonna die. Like, let's go. Yeah.
Oh, so what brought you out to PEI? Like, what brought you from Edmonton to PEI?
My husband's actually originally from here.
Oh, okay.
So he
How'd
was
you two?
out there. He does sheet metal. So they
Oh,
have a
okay.
really good school out there for trades. So yeah, he was out there going to school for that. And then we just moved back here.
How'd you two meet?
How did we meet? It was a blind date.
Really? That actually works
Yeah,
out?
it did. And I didn't want to go. And my roommate was like, well, his last name's Scully. I'm like, that's a cool last name. Okay, I guess I'll go. So I did.
Oh,
And
that's amazing. That's the that's
out.
the incentive.
Yeah, no, I remember just sitting there in my sweats. I'm like, oh, fine, I'll go get dressed.
Well, it
Yeah.
obviously worked out.
Yeah, it did. It worked out.
Does he have a reverence for horror movies like you do?
No.
Yeah.
He doesn't mind them, but he doesn't like gore.
Oh, really?
So he can't do like the gory ones
Interesting.
very well. But that's all right. Actually, I think it was our second date. It was when the Evil Dead remake came out.
Oh yeah, the
And
Fede Alvarez one, is that what you're
yeah,
thinking?
yeah, and I wanted to go see that. And he's like, well, I don't like scary movies. Is it gory? And I was like, well, the original one wasn't that bad. I'm like, I've seen the original and it really wasn't that bad. So this one's not going to be, you'll be fine. And I think like 5 minutes in, I could like feel the death glare beside me and I wouldn't even look at him. Because you know how that movie went, like it
Oh yeah,
started and then it was just relentless right till the end, right?
it's
And I don't
actually a
think he's the worst.
surprisingly good movie.
Yeah, I really liked
I
it.
liked it a
I
lot
really did.
too. It doesn't get a
Yeah,
lot of
it's
love
almost,
because it's them trying to reinvent Evil Dead, and everybody just loves the Bruce Campbell ones. But
yeah.
it's really good as a horror movie on its own right. And yeah, no,
Oh,
that's rough. The tree's ripping her apart. It's raining blood. She's pulling her. Like there's a lot of gore in that movie.
yeah. And that poor guy, what was his name? The one with was it the one with the glasses who
Yeah.
just got like wailed on with like the nail gun and everything. That poor guy. And the part with the toilet seat
Oh,
where he
right.
smacked her in the head with the back of the toilet tank or
Yeah.
whatever it was.
It's funny because I had this conversation with someone a while ago how old horror, I mean, there's a weird line you tread with like gore, but also like not showing everything, because sometimes the imagination can freak you out more than seeing everything.
Mhm.
You watch like one of my favorite horror movies, is probably my favorite horror movies, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because
Oh yeah.
it has this 70s grimy feel. You feel dirty just watching it from the beginning, and it really gives you that sort of vibe the whole time. But like
Mhm.
when they show him put the guy in the hook, and that's sort of it. That's enough to be disturbing. And then they do the remake, the Jessica Biel one, and like you're right, they got it. It's not just enough to do the one thing. They have to really put people through the ringer in new horror movies. Like they
Yeah.
put him on the hook, they cut his foot off, they put salt on the foot, they put him back on the hook. He starts to struggle off the hook, he falls back on it. Like it's just like it's almost like a comedy sketch where the guy just can't make it. Like they just put him through hell, and then he just gets like shot in the head or something later. But it's like ridiculous. The level
And
of
then I sit and wonder why we like this stuff. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I'm sitting there watching, I'm like, why am I like this? Like
yeah, I
it's
agree. I
yeah.
don't know why. Like maybe there's a deeper conversation we had about like why horror fans really like it on the level you do. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't given it enough thought to like to create a thesis. But
Yeah. I find like I'm always an anxious person. Like
Mm-hmm.
I always was. I was just kind of anxiety about like just stupid things.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that when I watched like scary movies and that, I would rather be scared about a guy in a hockey mask than scared that somebody's going to break into my house. You know what I mean? At least
Mm.
I have something not plausible to be scared of than something
Oh,
plausible. Like
interesting.
like even in a mall, I used to get really nervous just because there were too many people and I just didn't like it. And then sometimes my mind just goes to zombies. I'm like, well, I know for a fact zombies probably aren't going to happen. So let's just think about zombies. And then we don't have to think that somebody's going to like shoot up the mall or something. Right. You know what I mean? I just kind of,
Yeah.
it helps me to think about something else. Although I do firmly believe zombies can happen after all the crap that we've had the past 2 years.
There's some evidence to in the past and some certain types of diseases that are similar. I don't think we're going to get the rise from the grave zombies, more like the 28 days later
Oh,
zombie
no,
maybe.
we're going to get like the rabies zombies. Like
Oh yeah,
rabies exists. It's just going to be a updated rabies.
yeah. That's what 28 days later
Yeah.
was basically, and it's
Yeah.
yeah. I could see that one happening for sure. But that's
Mhm.
interesting. I never thought of it that way. That like it's a way to sort of cope with anxiety to focus your fear on something that isn't going to happen instead of the things that could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always found that comforting about the horror movies that are about something supernatural because basically, I mean, as far as I know, ghosts don't exist. So I'm not quite as scared of ghost stuff as I am of like The Strangers, where someone just shows up at your house and says, "I'm going to kill the people in that house," and that's like the random violence that happens in everyday life, like shooting from a wall or whatever, that you can't escape. At least
Mhm.
the fear being placed in things that like Dracula or something that is not actually gonna be waiting for you in the shadows.
Mhm.
Is certainly a lot easier to cope with. No, that's interesting. I like that. I don't know if that's mine because I've never been an anxious person. I'd say like as a kid, even I'm a bit of an extrovert. And even as a kid, I was that way too. But
Mhm.
I mean, too much when I was a kid. I didn't temper it enough to it wasn't cool. It was like trying too hard.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. Like horror's always sort of appealed to me in a way that I don't know if it's just that's like a societal taboo or just like dealing with because I've always been fairly accepting of like a stoic kind of personality in which things I can't change I have to accept and things that I can't change I have to take agency and change. And I don't know if horror movies have always been a distraction from that or what, but yeah, I don't think I've done that deep of a dive into thinking about my personality that way. I've always gravitated more towards the ones that make you feel something instead of just like I love the slasher movies just for the fun of them, but
Mhm.
movies that really have like Silence of the Lambs or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, ones that have like a gritty underbelly that sort of kind of gets under your skin, I guess have always
Mhm.
been my sort of takeaway. Like I loved Hereditary.
Yeah.
In Midsommar, like Ari Aster, he's only done two movies, same with Jordan Peele, I guess, but to me they've both been masterpieces. So
Mhm.
I'm very excited to see what the next step is for those. Speaking of that sort of stuff, have you seen X, Ty West's new one?
No, I haven't. I've heard so many good things,
It's
but I
so
haven't seen
good.
it yet.
It's so good. You will love it. It's very interesting. Like a friend of mine had a conversation with us today about how it's got like the the motivation of the monsters in quotes, I'll say, the killers, is different than anything I've seen in a horror movie before. So it's very unique in
Mhm.
that way. So I look
Cool.
forward to it. Cool. So uh after being the pharmacy veterinary
Yeah.
administrator, what was the step? So you guys came out here when your husband
Yeah, we came out here,
yeah?
and it turned out I couldn't get a job once I moved out here because PEI is kind of weird. Where if you're not from PEI, you're not going to get a good job because all the good jobs go to like so and so's son or so and so. Like it's really bizarre like that,
Is that
right?
true? Is that come from away
It is
mentality
true,
sort of
and they'll
thing?
say it's not true. They'll say it's not true, but it's true.
Yeah, because it makes you
And
look bad. That's why they won't say it.
yeah, yeah. So I couldn't find a decent job when I moved here. So that's when I started crocheting again, just out of boredom. Because I actually learned to crochet when I was like 8. My grandma taught me, and I would just make like dishcloths or like little blankets for like my dolls or things like that. So I started making dolls, and that's just kind of when I got the knack for it. And then I did find a job at the only place that would hire me was the pot shop out here, where it sells like the pipes and all that. And
Okay.
so I worked, which was fine. I had worked at a place like that before, so I was knowledgeable. And I worked there for a few years. And then I got a job at a physiotherapy clinic as a receptionist. And I've been there for like 10 years now. And I still work there, just very part-time. I just kind of go in when I'm needed, just because it's I enjoy the atmosphere there. I like the staff there. I didn't really want to quit when I, quit to start my dolls full time. So yeah, I just kind of hung out there part-time and then did the dolls full time. And I wasn't really planning to, but I just noticed they were selling. Like, I didn't originally make these dolls and be like, I'm going to sell them. I just kind of made them and I'd post them online, just be like, look what I made. Yay. And people are like, can I buy it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So, and then I just kind of gradually got better and better with the detailing on them, and that just learning new ways to detail them.
So this
And I
is
actually
all
apply.
self-taught.
Yeah, it's all
Wow.
self-taught. I did have a book that taught me how to make the dolls to begin with, like just a regular doll. And so just that's how I kind of got the idea for it. But all my dolls now are actually my own pattern, and everything in it is just from my head. I don't even really write patterns. I kind of just go with the flow. So like if one character's legs are a bit longer, I'll just make the legs a bit longer, or the arms, right?
I'm just skimming through them while you're talking, and man, these are like, I know I've talked to you before about them. They're amazing. Like, and I love the level of how obscure some of the characters you do are. Like Frank from Hellraiser, for instance. Like, to see him as a yarn doll is amazing. Yeah, like so when you started off, like, you started selling them to such an extent that you could do it as a full-time gig.
Give me 1 sec.
Oh, go ahead.
You need to go back to bed now. Back to bed. Go. Scoot. I'll be up shortly. Off to bed. I will be soon. Back to bed. Go. Shut the door. Okay, cool. Bye. Can you shut the door? Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, no problem at all. That's your son?
My daughter.
Oh, your daughter. Okay. You just have the
Who
one
we
child?
actually named Dana Scully.
See, it's good because enough time has probably gone between that when she's old enough to get the reference that probably all her friends will be giving crap about it.
Nobody gets it except for maybe like the odd teacher. And they'll be
Really?
like, oh, because I mean, the X-Files wasn't as cool as I thought it was. Like, I'll talk to some people about it. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, the X-Files. They're like, never heard of it. I'm like,
what?
Well,
how have they not?
We would have had friends.
Cultural phenomenon, man. Like, that show was amazing.
I thought it was super popular, but apparently, nope, cult classic.
Isn't that disappointing when you think of something like, I thought Twin Peaks was like the biggest thing in the world when I discovered it after it was over, and then like people were like, what? I never heard of the show before. I'm like, Twin Peaks, it's amazing. And now it's everywhere because they did the new thing. Well, not so much now, but when they brought it back for the final season finally. So
yeah.
So yeah, like you found a community that fast that you could be selling these online enough to make it a full-time gig of sorts.
Yeah, they just kind of, I find like online is probably your best friend. Like, social media is probably your best friend for just getting your name out there, right? Like,
yeah, of course,
people share, and that's all you need is just people to like share it, right? Which is why I appreciate when people like share it, and I'm always sharing like work that I see, because even if you can't afford to buy it, if you share it, it'll get to somebody who can afford to buy it, and that's awesome. And I find with my dolls too, what I kind of do is I apply the homemade FX stuff that I used to do to the dolls, so it's not all yarn. Like, the doll is a base of yarn. And then when I'm doing like the wounds in that, I'm actually using like the paint as like I would liquid latex or something, right? Or I'll make some extra yarn and kind of brush it out to make like a skin, and then put that on there to make it like a latex, right? So it's more just doing a FX look on them rather than just painting everything. Like, you want that 3D gore effect going on.
Yeah, no, they're truly amazing.
Yeah.
And the range, like you do customs, which I saw you do as well. Because
Hmm.
did you mention the Brundlefly was a custom that you'd done?
Yeah, he is a custom, yeah.
Wow.
So I don't think there's been a custom I've turned down. Pretty much, if you want it done, I'll get her done.
Well, we're going to
Um,
talk. Are you familiar with the Phantom of the Paradise?
I've heard of it. Yes,
Brian De Palma's early. It's an early Brian De Palma movie with Paul Williams in it. It's kind of a takeoff Faust mixed with the Phantom of the Opera. It's like a rock
no,
opera in
I'm
the
thinking of a
70s.
different one. I'll look it up. What's it called?
The Phantom of the Paradise.
I'll look it up.
So the Phantom character from it is one that I would like to order. So we'll talk
Yeah,
because
yeah, absolutely.
it's one of my favorite movies. And if you haven't seen that, highly, it's a musical. If you can get beyond that,
I
um,
love musicals.
yeah, and the music's
It's
amazing.
why I have a hard time between Gremlins and Gremlins 2, which one's better, because Gremlins is technically better, but Gremlins 2 has a musical number.
Gremlins
You
2 is
can't.
just Gremlins 2 is just crazy fun, man. Like
Yeah,
I love it
yeah.
so much. Like, did you ever listen to Mark Maron's podcast, WTF, was a big inspiration for this. But he had Joe Dante on it years ago. And I remember I'm a huge fan of all of Joe Dante's movies, like everything from Matinee to Inner Space to even the ones that most people crap on, like Small Soldiers, I still love. But he talked about, like, I guess he did Gremlins 1, and they were like, they're like, it did so well, like it did really, really well. And he's like, we wanted to do 2, and he's like, no, it's too hard work with puppets, I don't want to do it. And then they're like, then a couple of years go, or a year goes by, and they're like, no, come back, we want to do Gremlins 2. And he's like, here's more money. And he's like, no, I really don't want to do it, it's too much work. So a year goes by, and they're like, come on, we really want to do Gremlins 2, we'll give you, all this money. And he's like, we'll give you all this money, and you can do whatever you want. We'll have no studio input whatsoever. And he was like, okay. And that's why Gremlins 2 is so batshit crazy, because it's like a parody of horror movies. It's a parody of Gremlin movies. Like, they break the fourth wall constantly. They go to insane places. Essentially, Donald Trump is the bad guy / turned good guy. Like, he was supposed to be the bad guy, but John Glover was such a lovable actor that you couldn't really hate him. So they just sort of retooled the script to make him more of a nice person. They got the female gremlin. It's like they just threw everything at the wall. Christopher Lee's in it. Like, it's just Hulk Hogan's in it. Like, it's just insane. Leonard Maltin, who I think he gave a bad review for the first Gremlins movie, and that's why they asked him to come play himself doing a bad review for the second Gremlins movie, which he agreed to. I don't know if it was maybe Gremlins, maybe it was another movie he'd done that Maltin had done a bad review for. But like he just went all in, and it's so insane, but it's one of the funnest movie experiences I think I've ever had watching that movie, and still do.
Yeah. No, it is a fun movie. I do love Gremlins 1 and 2. They're both amazing.
I'm hesitant on this prequel they're doing, the animated one. We'll see how that turns out.
I always try to think too, though, like, they have all these like newer movies coming out, but like they're aimed at kids, you know what I mean? And I have a hard time, even I have a hard time sometimes seeing these new shows come out. I'm like, oh, this is crap. But I'm like, no, I have to watch it through the eyes of like a child, because it's not for us. Like, even with like the Ghostbusters and all that, and people are just like either bashing on it. I'm like, it's not for you. It's for the 8-year-olds. Like, it's for the 7-year-olds. I understand you had it when you were younger, but you don't own it. Yeah. Like,
I say that a lot. When people gave the female Ghostbusters movie so much crap, I was like, it's not okay. Number one, there's two things I always quote. One is, I always say, it's not like Melissa McCarthy's going to kick in your door and take your copy of Ghostbusters. Like, you still have it, go watch it. If this isn't for you, don't watch it, but don't ruin it for people that want to watch it or enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like Ricky Gervais had a great stand-up comedy routine where he talked about what the internet was like, or what modern society was like. He's like, basically, if you walked by a board, like in a store where people put up signs for events coming out, and one of them is stuck there and it says like guitar lessons with a name, and you look at it and you go, well, I don't want guitar lessons. I really don't want guitar lessons. So they take the number, you go home, you call up the guy, and he's like, hello. And you go, I don't want any fucking guitar lessons. It's like, it's not for you. Just walk away. Look at it, say, I don't want those, walk away. Why do you have to get so engaged and ruin it for, like, it's just not for you? Move on. So yeah, I don't understand it either. I mean, you think about that too with like even something as mainstream as Star Wars. Like Lucas made those for kids, and then he made the new ones, like the prequel trilogy, for kids. So people that shit all over Jar Jar and all that sort of stuff, it's like, look, he's not my favorite character either, but they were designed for kids, and there were kids now, like 25-year-olds that grew up with those movies, that are like, I love those movies. They're great when I was a kid, you know, and for them, that's the Star Wars for the older generation for them. And like people have a weird, like, I know, like I've had this conversation before about the fanboy or the fanboy, fangirl fandom in general, how like this toxic, like it's mine. And
Yeah.
like I want it to be a certain way, and if it's not exactly how I pictured it to be in my head, it sucks. And I feel like there's a lot of things that fall into that category, because people want, and it's a weird line, people want it to be the same but different, but not too different, but not too the same. You know, if they make Star Wars The Force Awakens, they're like, well, it's too similar to the other one. And then they make The Last Jedi, and they're like, well, it's too different than the other one. And it's like, what do you want? What do you want? Like, what'll make you happy?
Nothing. They just want to be miserable.
Like,
because they want to be 8 years old again watching that original Star Wars in the theater.
You nailed it on the head. You nailed it
Yeah.
on the head. Somebody said that too. I think it was Brian Hussein, who was like, what did he say? He said, like, you know, people are like, you know, they make these new Michael Bay Ninja Turtles, and they're like, I don't like them. They're CGI. They're not my Ninja Turtles. My Ninja Turtles were guys in suits, and Vanilla Ice was there, and mom and dad were still married. You know, and like it was just a happy time in your life. So good.
Yeah.
So some of your dolls have made it pretty far. And we were talking at the convention about how you had a Joe Bob and a Darcy doll that made it on the show.
Yeah, it was actually, I did when the show first came out on Shudder, I did a doll from every film that they showed. So I think there were like 7 of them. I can't quite remember. That was a long time ago. Ages
when
ago.
it first came out on Shudder, season 1?
Yeah, it was like season 1. And so I did a doll from every movie that was on there. And then they saw it, and I was like, oh, well, I can just send them to you. So I did. And then they wound up on the Christmas special, I believe it was. So that would have been whatever one was after the original. What, the first Christmas special, yes. Yep. So they had them on the tree as little ornaments. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, you know? And yeah, so that was pretty cool. I've made dolls for Jennifer Tilly. She's actually placed orders for me.
Oh, that's so cool. Like, has that been like, what is that like to get an order from someone that you love?
She's so sweet.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of skeptical about like famous people because I don't trust them. You know what I mean? Like you never know what they're going to do to betray you. So years ago, I was just like, I'm just going to watch your movies and I will enjoy you as an actor or actress. And that is it. It goes no more than that because I can't take the heartache anymore.
I was going to say, who hurts you, Chelsey? Who hurts you?
Lots of them. They all hurt me. I say now, I'm like, I don't trust any of them now except for Ryan Reynolds. If Ryan Reynolds ever did anything to like betray his good-natured soul, I would die.
Yeah.
He's too fair. But yes, Jennifer Tilly is actually very, very sweet. She was fantastic to like work with. And who else?
I don't know if you can reveal this. What did you make for her? Or is that something that's personal since it was a
Oh, no. I made her Chucky and Tiffany doll. And I made her, it was like her. So it was her like as Jennifer Tilly holding a Tiffany doll. And then I made her character from Family Guy. Was it Joe's
Bonnie.
Bonnie, yeah. And her.
That's awesome. Wow. That's super cool.
Yeah, so that was really good. And Damien, is it Maffei? I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He was in the movie Haunt, and he was in the movie Strangers. The second one, Pray at Night, I believe it was.
Yes, it was. Prey at night, yes.
Pray, yeah.
Yes.
I made a doll for him. And that one I just traded for an autograph. Sometimes I just ask them, like, I'll make a doll, and they really like it. I'm like, oh, I'll trade you for an autograph. And they're like, okay. And then we just do that. And
that's awesome.
Good. Yeah. So it's pretty cool when they get their names out there. And I've made some other ones that I've been told have made it to directors. Like I made the pale lady for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I made a whole
Oh,
bunch of them for like their promo boxes and that.
did Alvarez do that one too? Who did that movie?
No, that was shoot, what is his name? He did Pan's Labyrinth too.
It's not
And
Del Toro, but
yeah, it is.
no, I think he produced it. I don't think he directed it.
Oh,
Because I'm a
produced.
huge Del Toro's.
Yeah.
Scary
No.
Stories to Tell in the Dark. Movie. Because I remember the director was somebody that was kind of. Oh yeah, it's André Overdow. That's why I remembered it because his name's the same as my name. He did The Orphanage, which was another
Oh yeah.
Spanish horror movie that Del Toro
That
produced.
was a weird one.
Yeah,
The
I really
Orphanage.
liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good one. It's another one of those sort of atmospheric ones.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I did for that and Brightburn when that came out.
Wait, you did one for the director of Brightburn? You think it went
Well,
there?
no, they do the promo. Like I don't make it for the directors themselves. They make
Oh,
like promo boxes when the film comes out. So they do end up giving those promo boxes to like the directors
oh,
and producers and things like that. But I
wow.
never really know where they go. It's just kind of like maybe it made it there, maybe it didn't.
Yeah.
Who knows? But they made it to somebody. And the new Addams Family, the cartoon.
Oh, yes.
I just did one for that one as well. I made a bunch of Wednesday dolls.
Yeah, there's a new Netflix show coming out, that Wednesday show as well. That I think Tim Burton
Oh,
directed.
oh yeah, there is too. I forgot
Yeah.
about that. My kids write into spooky stuff too, so we're always looking for new scary stuff to watch that's acceptable for a 5-year-old.
So I was gonna say, is there like, to bring it back around, I guess, is there like, as a parent, introducing your child to the same stuff your dad was essentially doing for you, is there a certain level of pride in that you're extending on this tradition, or is it just getting to, and do you find like experiencing some of these things again with your kids brings like a new joy to some of these old horror things that you may have dismissed or forgot
It is
about?
kind of cool seeing them get scared. Like she's kind of like me, like she enjoys being scared, but I have the same rules. I'm like, if you're gonna be bugging me at 2 a.m., then we're done, right? So she's pretty good. There's been a couple movies where it was a little too much, and I could tell she wanted me to sleep with her.
Mhm.
And I'm a little bit more of a gentler parent than my father was, so I'm like, yeah, I'll lay with you tonight, right? But she's pretty good, and she also enjoys the monsters. She likes looking at the creatures and all that. She loves Killer Clowns from Outer Space, like loves it.
He's
There
got
was
good
one
taste.
point, yeah, she just like she watched my DVD till it didn't even work anymore, and then I bought the Arrow Blu-ray when it came out because I love the movie anyway. She's not allowed to touch that. She's like, "Oh, can we watch?" I'm like, "No, you can take your crap DVD that sometimes works and take it to your bedroom and watch that."
Yeah, the Arrow ones are a bit too expensive
Yeah,
to just throw around.
yeah, exactly. So, as a treat, she can sometimes watch it on the big TV down here, as long as I'm there to make sure she's not destroying the DVD player or the Blu-ray player.
Yeah.
She likes the movie House too. She really likes that one. She's
House as
weird
well, or
because
House 2?
oh no, she just likes House as well. She did not like House 2. She was
No.
having none of that. She's like,
Okay.
"Where's Big Ben?" I'm like, "Big Ben has nothing to do with House 2." She's like, "Why are we watching this? What's that?" I think the only thing she enjoyed was the caterpillar, the
Oh yeah.
caterpillar, the
Yeah.
puppy caterpillar thing.
Yeah.
She liked that, but no, she was horribly offended by House 2. And I mean, you can't win them
Yeah.
all.
Well, no. If you have a favorite character for number one and they're not in number two, you're obviously gonna be disappointed. Especially considering the
Mhm.
stories are sort of scattered, are they not? Like, I don't think they're totally connected in any way.
They're
Or
not
anything.
connected at all,
No,
I
it's
don't think.
just no. I don't
I
think
think
so. I
it's
think it's just the name.
same house, which doesn't even look like the same house, but they're
Oh,
implying that it's the same house. But
it's
everything about the house and the yard is different.
they're like, you're not gonna remember the last movie. Here's the next one.
Pretty much.
It's like the Troll 2 of the Troll franchise.
Yeah.
Like, this has
Yeah. Just
absolutely
weird.
nothing to do with the first one. There's not even anything called troll in this. It's about goblins. The word troll is not uttered once in this entire movie. But
Yeah.
Troll 2.
Yeah. But no, it is cool watching all this new stuff with her. And I kind of feel like that's why I can't really have beef with remakes either. Because if you look at some of these original movies, they don't hold up, right? Like
No.
I could show my kids the Dawn of the Dead, like the original Dawn of the Dead. And I guarantee you she'd be like, that's not scary because she's just kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to show her the remake, she'd probably shit her little pants, right? Like, so I mean, if we want these stories to carry on, even with like the Friday the 13th franchise or Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, if we want them to carry on, you're going to have to update them because kids aren't scared of what they were. I don't think my kid's even going to be scared of Friday the 13th when I feel she's old enough to watch that, right? Like, she's still too young now, but I have a feeling when I show her, she's going to be horribly disappointed.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too, because it does, like I mentioned earlier, it does, like, watching the new ones will, and if they have a love for them, will hopefully lead them back to the originals. And like with age too, the things, like if you're watching Nightmare or Night of the Living Dead just to be scared of zombies, you're probably not going to be. It's black and white. It's the 50s. But like as an allegory, and I know Romero says that he wasn't intended that to be an allegory about race or whatever. But when but whether he intended or not, it is. I mean, most people read that into it. And you know, that and the fact that like when humans are put into a situation where we have to rely on each other, it falls apart really quickly, which is really what he said his motivation was, that like people can't, that whole movie is full with them not being able to get along and it ultimately being their undoing. And that makes you realize more that like it's true, if shit fell apart and society was in shambles, we just had to rely on each other to try to get along and survive. We're probably not going to get along and survive. And so like that brings a level of, I think that's the level that's more disturbing to me watching those movies than just the zombies eating people, which is fun in its own right.
Yeah. Well, that's just humanity falling apart. I think deep down we all kind of want to see that.
I think you're right. I always say I like persons. I don't like people. I feel like they're individuals I really like, but as a society, I feel like humans are inherently broken. We don't. So hopefully we'll get our shit together, but I'm not confident we will.
Yeah. Not before the zombie apocalypse, at least.
Any day now, huh?
Yeah, any day. We're prepared.
Awesome. Well, so where do people go to see your dolls and to want to purchase them?
So the easiest way is to just go on my website. It's talesfromthestitch.com. And then there's like a little button that just says purchase here or buy here. Anyway, click on that and you'll find all the ones that are available. And then you can also order customs. You would just hit on the contact me and just send me an email about what you want. And I can send you all the information on what the price would be and the time frame. I think right now we're looking at like 3 to 4 weeks for things to be completed, but I'm pretty flexible. If you need it for a birthday and you waited till the last minute and you just really, really need it, or you're going to be in trouble, I can usually make it work. I'll make you feel bad about it, but I'll make it work.
As you should.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the easiest way. I don't do a lot of cons or anything, just because they're expensive and I don't like traveling. Even before all this plague stuff hit, I wasn't a big traveler. So yeah, online is the best way to go because I don't go anywhere else.
Well, before we go, I don't normally like these conversations, usually just like this, we just talk, and I find that's a much funner sort of natural way to do these sort of things. But being that you're such a horror nut like I am, can you give a list or name off some of the horror movies you feel like aren't widely seen by people that you think people should watch?
Oh, I'm going to start with Abby. So Abby is a blaxploitation film. It was pretty much a black exorcist movie.
What? I never heard of this.
Yes, it's very hard to find. I found my copy on eBay and it was like stupid price, like $40, and it only works half the time, but whatever. Actually, I think you can find it on YouTube as well, which I normally don't recommend, but in this case, nobody owns the rights to that movie, and go hard and watch it on YouTube because nobody's losing money. What else is there? Oh, I watched the Poughkeepsie tapes again the other day.
I've never seen that one. I've heard good things.
It's really creepy. I really like it.
Really?
What's another one? I'm trying to think because I feel like I don't know what people aren't watching.
That's a good point, but I don't know if there's a lot of overlap. I mean, obviously for me there is, with a lot of different things. If people are listening to this for the comic talk, if they're listening to this for the other talk, So it's kind of all over the map. But yeah, I mean, one I just heard about but haven't seen before, and it's my next one. Well, there's two that I've just discovered kind of about today that are on my list, and I don't know if I've seen them, but perhaps you have. Was Host, the Shutter one? It's like a Zoom call, which I've heard is really good. And there's one from the it was a BBC TV movie in the 90s called Ghost Watch.
Oh, yes.
Have you seen that?
I have, yeah.
Is it as good as people say it is? Because I've heard a lot. Yeah? Okay.
It's a good time.
Because I was reading about the actual story, because they put this thing out on BBC, and they had actual BBC news people playing themselves going to a place to investigate some mysterious, like it was almost done as a news story where they're doing a sort of expose in this house where stuff happens, and then stuff happens, and like almost everybody thought it was real. They got like 3,000 calls the night that it came out that people were convinced it was a real thing. And apparently some adult that was like had a mental issues, that had like the mental capacity of a 13-year-old, that saw it, killed himself because he was so scared that his house was haunted too after seeing this thing. Yeah. The family blamed the movie for it. So
of course they did.
Yeah, of course, because there's
we
no other
blamed
factors
movies for everything back then.
Yeah, and we still I like that we sort of moved beyond that. In music too. I mean, remember when Columbine happened, everyone was blaming Marilyn Manson. I mean, I feel like if you're gonna go do something insane, it doesn't matter what you see, something is going to trigger you into it.
Yeah. Well, the fact that they blame everything but the guns. Like, I remember when Columbine happened, and like of course I was in Canada, but like I had a friend who wore a trench coat like before all this, and the principal was like, "You can't wear that trench coat anymore." I'm like, so we're blaming the trench coat now? Like, like you're making people uncomfortable. I'm like, we've always made people uncomfortable. We're goth, honey. It's just. Yeah. But yeah, he wasn't allowed to wear that trench coat because it meant he was going to shoot up the school. I just thought that's kind of weird. I'm like, I don't think that's the problem, but go hard.
No, and I don't want to like generalize about the States specifically, but I feel like the issues that people that aren't Americans probably have with America are probably the sort of same issues that people who listen to this from America would probably agree are issues in their country. But like, I know they're going through a big resurgence now of repealing all these anti-gay, or putting in all these anti-gay laws, or don't say gay or don't say trans, or you can't like even talk about it, or like it's illegal in some states to even reference what your gender or sexuality is. So like as a teacher, it's funny because they did it purposefully to stop people from talking about homosexuality or anything beyond heteronormative stuff. But the way the laws are spelled, like if I was a gay teacher, I can't say me and my husband went to see a movie last week. But because of the way the laws are, because they want to be able to put these laws in place, but don't want to be perceived as being against gay people, they had to make the language in such a specific way that it applies to everybody, so they can't be accused of singling out a certain party. So now if I'm myself and I say I was a teacher, I can't say me and my wife. I have to say me and my partner, or me and my spouse. You can't say, and even the normative stuff. So it's almost like in a society where we're trying to be more accepting and put everybody in the same playing field, they sort of inadvertently in some ways have caused that by trying their own backwards way to hide part of it. It's still not good because you can be arrested, or not arrested, but charged or lose your job just for making a reference to your life. But in a way, they sort of inadvertently put everyone on a normalized feeling with their language. So it's really strange. But yeah, it's like the things they accuse, right? Like having your teacher reference that he has a husband will turn your kid gay. Like, what are we doing here?
That boggles my mind. Like, they act as if kids are these fragile, tiny little creatures that can't fly. I'm like, if you tell them this now, then they're not going to question it when they're older. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very open. I know with my kid about like, just like she knows that some girls like girls and some boys like girls and some boys like boys, and I just tell her, I'm like, it's none of your business. Like, that's just how it is. And she's like, oh, okay. She doesn't follow up the question with like, the mechanics of it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just what I don't get. I mean, are your kids asking very inappropriate questions after? Because my kid's just like, okay, can I have a granola bar? Like,
yeah. Like people think like the one complaint that I always found most interesting about that is like when they're like, well, how am I supposed to explain that to my kid? And you literally just described how you explain it to your kid and what the end result is. And it's there's nothing wrong with it. You say some boys like boys, some boys like girls, some girls like girls, you know, and that's it. Like that's enough of an explanation for a kid. They don't want you to draw them a diagram of what sex looks like between these parties. Like that's not part of it. You know,
Well, it'd be like keep them away from pregnant women then, because then they're going to ask about what's in your belly, and you'll be like a baby, and they'll be like, "How did that happen?" Like, no, they don't. They don't think like that, right?
yeah.
They just believe what you tell them, and that's that.
Yeah, and the idea that there's some kind of sponge that immediately is going to become whatever's around them is insane to me.
No,
Because there's
well, I
lots
hope
of.
not, because my kid watches a lot of scary movies.
Well, hey, you're an example. You didn't go around murdering people, so not that I know of anyway.
No,
So
we don't talk about that. That's a dark time in my life.
that's a long time ago, and the occasional weekend when I need to let off some steam.
Yeah.
Oh well, thanks. I know I kept you from putting your daughter to bed, I think, so I'll let you go.
Oh no, she was supposed to be in bed an hour ago.
Well, the apple's far from the tree, I guess. Stay up and watch the horror
Yeah,
movies.
I know.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. I was really happy to have you.
Thank you for inviting me. I had a great chat.
Awesome. We should definitely connect sometime at MPEI.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't like to leave your house too much, but if you can make an exception, I'll meet you out somewhere.
Yeah, you can come raid my physical media collection for bizarre films that I found in a Walmart bin.
I guess we didn't talk about that, but do you collect Blu-rays as well, like or physical media in general? Because I do as too.
I do. I have a hard time giving up my DVDs to I didn't want to upgrade to Blu-ray. You know what I mean?
I'm feeling that way about 4K. I'm like, I'll buy them new now 4K, but I'm not gonna. I don't feel like it's that big a difference. Not enough for me to.
There's really not, unless you get a really fancy TV. You know what I mean? Like if I were to upgrade to like a super cool home theater system, and even then it would be
nominal. It's nominal.
Yeah, like Jurassic Park. Like I would go and buy updated Jurassic Park, but like I don't know, some of those films just aren't worth upgrading.
And like old movies are filmed in such a way too that I think Blu-ray is probably as high as they can get. They'll rescan. Like I watched Eyes Without a Face. You ever seen that movie? So like black and white. Yeah, beautiful movie. But I can't imagine that's going to look any better on 4K than it does on the Blu-ray scan they have for Criterion, because it was filmed 80 years ago. Not maybe not quite that much, but 70 years ago. Actually, probably that was the 50s, right? So.
Actually, I think the only Criterion I ever bought was Night of the Living Dead, because they're so pricey. But like to see that movie so beautifully remastered, I was just like, wow, like this is nice.
Yeah, and it's nice when you can
find Criterion money.
Yeah. Well, I don't have kids and I'm married, so I have a split income. So it's nice that I can indulge in such a manner, although it's not as it's more like I think I go in spurts where I get into this sort of stuff and then I grab everything I want pretty quickly, and then then it's just a holding pattern. So stuff that I really like will be added, but it's like I've kind of got all of the big ones now, short of a few. Like the Dawn of the Dead on Blu-ray was the one I wanted the most, the original, and thankfully an English company put it a 4K release. Unfortunately, all the special features are on Blu-ray discs, which don't play in the region 1 player. But the movie itself is on a 4K disc, which is region free, so I can watch that at least. But yeah, no, that's cool. It's nice. I don't meet a lot of people. I have some friends, but not a lot of people in the wild that collect, the Blu-rays.
Yeah, no, and then you get the artwork too. You know what I mean? Like even seeing my kid sometimes come down, because she doesn't get a Blockbuster. She's never seen a Blockbuster, right? But she'll come down. She'll just look at the covers, and I'm like, yeah, like that's. Look at those covers.
It's funny because my need to want to make money or get rich is never for like security or for all the things that people want money for. It's mostly so like I could have like a movie store in my basement, just do it to look like an old Blockbuster where you can put your movie thing on a display where you can walk through and look at them that way. Or that sort of stuff is like, or a home theater room where I can have the giant screen and the surround sound and the theater seats, and like that's the make money so I can do that kind of mentality for me.
I know. That's my goal too. Just have like a whole basement. Like we have the big screen, but we don't have like the home theater system. But even the big screen is just nice. Some movies to just pop on there and watch, and it's fun with the kid too, because you're like, oh look, we don't need to go to the theater, and take you out in public. We can just do this out in the basement.
That's right.
Yeah, I can
You'll
make
be
your
safe.
popcorn for you.
Yeah, you'll be safe here in the house.
Yeah, well, not even safe, just you're loud.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to drag you out of the theater. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Well, I'm immediately going to hang up this call and then send you a picture of what I'm looking for a doll. But in the
Okay,
meantime,
cool.
thank you so much for being on, Chelsey. This is awesome.
Yes, thank you. You have yourself a great night.
You as well. Catch up with you soon.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. And there's my conversation with Tales of the Stitch creator, Chelsey Scully, mother of Dana Scully, which is amazing. I knew talking to Chelsey at the Comic-Con that we had a lot in common, and we have a good conversation. And man, I tell you, I could talk to her forever because she's big into horror movies. We have a lot in common, and yeah, it's a great talk. I have to do a little more self-reflection on horror movies as to why I enjoy them as much as I do, because that's like an interesting question. I don't know if horror fans ask themselves a lot as to what truly. I love her answer. Her answer is amazing, and it's one that makes a lot of sense to me for a lot of people. But yeah, I have to try to figure out. I guess maybe do some deep inward reflection, for lack of a better word, and kind of figure that out, because I feel like that's an interesting conversation when I've never really had with myself. So there you go. We're getting deep. We're getting philosophical, existential. Usually when I use that word, it's followed by dread, which is something I'm filled with a lot. However, I feel like, yeah, maybe some self-discovery is needed when it comes to this topic. Yeah, so I haven't mentioned in a little while, but please, subscribe to the podcast, please, if you don't already. Share, as Chelsey mentioned when we spoke. If you can't be a part of something, which you can easily with this because it doesn't cost anything, you can share and hopefully put it into the eyes or ears of somebody else who could enjoy it as well. Rate it as well. That often helps, and subscribe, and yeah, all that good stuff. Also tune into my the other podcast I do with Davin Scalehorn, another former guest of the show, X-Rated, the X-Men animated review show, in which Davin and I watch old episodes of the Fox X-Men cartoon and rate each episode and have a fun conversation about them while recapping them. I believe the next episode is Time Fugitives Part 1 from Season 2, in which we see the return of Cable and Bishop, which is always fun. So if you're into X-Men, you're into nostalgia podcasts, that one is actually done live as a video, but there's an audio version as well, which comes out shortly after, so you can tune in that way. But more importantly, make sure you tune in here in a fortnight for the next episode. I have a couple irons in the fire for guests. Hopefully one of them gets back to me soon, and I can announce that, but I will have that up as soon as I know, as I don't like to leave you guys hanging too long. I think I did with this one, but it's good. It was a great guest and a great conversation, so it was well worth it. But thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.